Sure. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be with you today. So when Ruby asked me to come do this training, we talked about different subjects and what should we name it. Kind of my primary focus on my team is we work internet leads and we work with buyers. Because of that, we also get a ton of listings because a lot of buyers need to sell, and so we end up getting a lot of listings as well. But I want to tell you a little bit about my story, but I want to give you a couple quotes before I start. A quote that I listen to quite a bit, but I follow Jim Rohn. It's one of Tony's original mentors, and something that he says, if you want things to change, you got to change. If you want things to get better, you got to get better. It's a quote that's always stuck with me is, if I want things in my life to change, I got to be the change. If I want things to be better, I got to be better. And so I realized in my life, early, when I first started, it wasn't one of those, like I got into real estate, it was like, man, this is, everything was successful and everything was great. In fact, it was the complete opposite. When I first started, I started with Jeremy Laguerre. Him and I were on a team together. Most of you guys know Jeremy. But being in real estate and doing real estate the correct way was very difficult for me to do. When I first started, I just kind of did what I wanted to do, which was a lot of things that weren't effective. And it wasn't until I got some coaching and some training through George where I finally realized that, hey, these are the things that you need to do to be able to become successful. And a big thing is what do you think was the most difficult for anyone to start doing? Prospecting. I was in a summit. It wasn't a summit at the time. George had a coaching business. And I went to this, Rob Oakey, one of George's best friends, said, hey, there's this real estate guru guy and he does this coaching business. Come meet, George and come to his training. I went there. I think there was probably 200, maybe 300 people there. And he sat up there and two things kind of like really hit home for me. One is he started prospecting live phone calls in front of 200 or 300 people, which, I get in, a group of maybe 10 with my agents, and we have about half the agents that are slowly dialing. It's like, hopefully if I push the buttons a little bit slow, maybe I won't have to be the person that takes the call. But George was doing it with 250, 300 people there and just doing these live calls. One is he ended up making a couple calls and set appointments. And then it's one of those things like when you watch Magic where I'm like, is that his uncle? Did he just call? Because it just seemed too good to be true. He was too good on the phone. He was very effective, and he set appointments. But my gut told me that this guy was just a master prospector. He was a master communicator and really had figured out this business. So that was the big aha. The second aha is he sat up there, and this had been after maybe a year or so of being in real estate and really struggling. But he sat up there and he said, stop fighting the process. Like, your job is to prospect. And for some reason that day, it hit me hard. I had been at a different brokerage, had different leaders and mentors that had told me maybe a lot of times what I wanted to hear, but not told me what I needed to hear. And there was a big difference. And for him to actually say, stop fighting the process. That, if you work a day and you're not prospecting, then you haven't really worked a day. And I needed to hear those things. And I walked away from that meeting very motivated, very inspired. But guess what? I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the discipline. I didn't have a lot of things to be able to start doing that process. So even though I was inspired to do this, I still had to learn all this stuff. But at least it gave me the hope that, hey, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, that I could figure this out and I could do it. One of the things that George says quite often that I think is really important, I think sometimes he says it so often that it kind of just glazes over, but he says there's nothing that you can't learn and there's nothing that you can't do in this business. And I realized that for me because I started very, very bad. When I first started figuring out how to prospect, I was prospecting with Jeremy and we were in an office together. In fact, we got an office very weirdly, like we talked our broker in and it was like, please give us an office, kind of thing. We were young guys and he gave us an office and we sat there and we made calls. But, we weren't the most effective at that point because we were still trying to figure this out. But we thought, let's hold each other accountable and let's start prospecting together. You make a call and then I would make a call. And every time that I started dialing, it was kind of like this silent prayer, like, please don't pick up, please don't pick up, and Jerry made a call and it was the opposite. It's like, please pick up so we could buy some time, and he'd make the call and hopefully we'd get an appointment. And so that's where I started in real estate. I started where prospecting and really communicating was very, very, very fearful. And so that quote, there's nothing that you can't learn and there's nothing that you can't do in this business, really hit home for me, because I've been on that side, and I've been on the side that I've been on for many, many years, where I've become a multimillionaire through developing communication and working leads and selling at a very, very high level. And so wherever you are, I would say just take a moment. You may be doing well, but there's other levels. There's things that you can get. You may be really struggling, and you can get through this. I was really struggling. Financially, I was really struggling. There was a time early when Jeremy and I were working that I was massively, massively in debt. And we were trying to figure out how to do real estate full time, and we were basically living off credit cards and lines of credit. And it got to a point where I was kind of maxed out. And if anyone's ever been maxed out, you know that there's not a chance in the world another bank is going to give you another dime. Like you have used all that they're willing to give you. I was maxed out. Jeremy was almost maxed out. But I remember there was a time that we literally went over, I think it was Chase Bank, and I remember thinking out in my mind, like, Jeremy's going to go in there and try to get another line of credit so we can make mortgage payments. And if he walks in there and doesn't get it, it's like kind of a piper's piped, it's going to happen. Like, I'm not going to make my payment this time, and luckily, a lot of grace there that he did get it. I remember him walking out, just looking at me like, we can make our payment. We'll warm up. We can figure this game out, So, and just bringing that up is just, it doesn't matter where you are in this business. If you've struggled on this business and you have fears or doubts, like, you can figure out this game of real estate. One of the things, and I criticize George once in a while for this, because early in coaching with him, he never really said the end piece of this, and I say this quite a bit to my team, but just know that the process of figuring this out is worth it. That was a big thing that I wanted my agents to understand early in coaching, because I never really heard that, but it's like, it is an absolute journey, and it is a battle to figure out this game of real estate and being self-employed and running a business. But I always want them to know early when they're figuring out that process that it's worth it. This has absolutely, changed my family, my financials, how I raise my kids, being able to earn the income that I've been able to do and see the things that money can do has really, really been worth it. And so the sacrifice of getting over fears and doubts and those feelings is worth it. So I think it's important when you hear someone speak that maybe is kind of where you'd love to see your business go, is just understand that someone's there, that it's worth it. And it's not easy, and it was very challenging, but it's absolutely been worth the fight to be able to figure out this game. So today I want to just talk about the buying process, working with buyers, how to prospect buyers, develop leads, work the leads, turn them into a sphere of influence, and getting referrals from those leads. And so there will be things that I say that seem very much elementary, or it's like, oh, of course, Dave. But I promise you, just like someone saying to me early that prospect, like, stop fighting the prospect. It may be something that's very elementary that maybe spark a little bit within you. It's like, okay, it's simple, but these little simple things that I'm hearing, I'm not doing, will make the world a difference in your business. So even though a lot of this stuff is simple, just take it in mind that there may be a couple things that are said today that may make the difference where all of a sudden it starts to head a different direction in your business. So,
hey Dave, just before you get into that, can you share a little bit about your mindset and resilience that kept you from not giving up? Like, struggling to prospect and getting clients and getting to that next level, so you know that was worth it. There's a little gap in between. What keeps you going with your mindset and resilience at the beginning? Because sometimes a lot of people get into the business, start to struggle, and they're like, okay, I need to go get a different job.
Yeah. So Ruby, what kept me going? It really is the simple thing. Is what kept me going when there's a lot of doubt and fears. I had to overcome that. Just repeat it so people on Zoom could hear it. I think having an accountability partner was really important. Having someone else that was on that same journey, connecting with people was really important for me. I had a friend that was doing it at the same time, and so just looking at him and be like, he's struggling too, and we're both really trying to figure it out, really made a difference. I also didn't have another process that I really was interested in. You know, I had done the college thing. I was 3 years into it, and I hated school. I was seeing people that had graduated, that were getting jobs, but they weren't making the money that I was hoping to make in my life. And then I also was surrounded by really top producers. I remember back in the day, you know, many of you guys know a big producer, Josh Johnson, but he was a guy that I looked up to, and I'm just like, man, this guy is killing it. You know, he's living the life that I wanted to live. He's buying the things that I wanted to buy, and so that was inspiring to me. So I always kind of knew that it was possible. I saw people that I'm like, as much as I love Josh is not the sharpest tool in the shed. I mean, he really, and he would laugh, and even if he was here, I'd tell him right to his face. And he knows that. He took the real estate exam, I think it was 6 or 7 times, and he was prideful, and he's like, I took it 7 times, so if I can do it, anyone can do it. I mean, he had that attitude, so I really believe that. It's just like, Josh is an awesome guy, and he's very outgoing, and there's a lot of things that he figured it out. But I looked at it and I was like, man, there's nothing overly special about Josh Johnson. But he was killing it, and he was making all this money, and he was buying the things that I wanted to have in my life, and he was living the life that I wanted. So for me, it was just, being around people. And if you don't have someone that you're around, connect to people. I mean, one of the biggest values of being at this company is surrounding yourself with very successful people that have figured out the game of real estate. So connect to them. I don't know of any of the top producers that are not open, you're not willing and not open to the idea of sitting down with someone and having an open conversation about where you are and where you need to go. And so connect to them, swallow your pride and maybe knock on the door and say, hey, could you give me some advice or give me some help? As someone that I would say has figured out the game of real estate and figured out how to make wealth through real estate, it's awesome to talk about it. It's awesome to say, let me share you what some of the struggles I've had and how I overcame them, and give you an example of things that worked and didn't work. So if you get to a point where you feel a little lost, touch base with someone. One is you're going to figure out, wow, this guy isn't that great. If he can do it, I can do it. I mean, that's happened a lot with Josh, getting around Josh. I'm like, man, how is he making this much money? And I can figure this out if he can, kind of thing. So that's a great question. So, okay. Buyers. Why do I like buyers? Especially when I was brand new in real estate. I love the idea that you could negotiate commissions with the contract, that you weren't necessarily picking up a client and having to have a very difficult conversation about commissions day one. And a lot of times, I would say majority of the times, commissions are paid by the seller side. So I love working with buyers. Right now, you remember guys when the NAR came out with the whole, we're changing the way, and you have to do this before you can open a home, and you have to get a buyer broker agreement, and it has to come from the buyers, and there was all this fear. Guys, I have made more money, our team has made more money because of the rules than it was beforehand. Instead of having to go to the agent that marked a 2% BAC or a 2.5% and trying to fight that up with the agent, it's so much easier just to put it in the offer and say, hey, my commissions are 3%. And could that change one day if the market changed into seller? Maybe. But I've been in lots of sellers markets, and we figure it out. But right now, we're making way more money than with this change. And so I like buyers for that reason. I like buyers because you can work with them. It's a less of a process to be able to earn their business. I love running a team that way. I have a brand new agents that will come in and prospect and literally don't know anything about real estate and are out showing clients homes that could put tens of thousands of dollars in their pocket. I love that. So I love buyers for that reason. The other thing is after we close the buyers, and that's what I'll end with eventually, is I love developing them through an SOI and through a referral-based business. Buyers that buy, eventually end up needing to sell in the future, or have friends or family that needs to buy and sell. So I love buyers. So if you're working with buyers, this will be a great training. If you try to refuse to buyers, you'll be a little bit confused. But I have made millions and millions of dollars working through buyers, developing buyers, and I've got lots and lots of listings through this process as well. So one of the first things I want to talk about is leads. I'll throw it out to the group. How do we get buyer leads? I mean, there's a bunch of ways, but how are we getting buyer leads, and how are you getting buyer leads if you're working buyers?
Referrals.
Okay, referrals, that's great, I love it. What else?
Open houses.
Open houses is a great tool to get buyers. What else?
SOI.
SOI, developing your SOI, end up being a referral. Internet leads, paying for advertisements online and directing into a website you can control. Zillow leads are buyer leads as well. You can pay Zillow, homes.com, realtor.com, all offer different lead sources. There's lots of programs that do that. What else? Other ones are there?
Door knocking.
Door knocking. Josh Johnson's a door knocker. Like he would go and knock up apartments and basically very easy to talk to someone on the door. Most of the the renters that are in these apartments eventually want to buy. So it's more of like figuring out the ones that are actually going to buy in the near future and try to pick them up. So there's lots of ways, but it's important to start off by saying, well, you need a lead to be able to prospect. You got to figure out where those leads are going to come from, and you got to figure out how to develop those leads. And it doesn't matter. I've seen success on almost every one of these areas, so I don't think it necessarily matters what you're doing. It's just that you're doing it consistently. That you have a system, you have certain things that you're doing weekly, that you're developing leads that are coming in. The next one is prospecting. I'm going to spend a big chunk of the time on this. But depending on if this is a warm lead, meaning if it's a referral, or if it's a kind of a colder lead, if it's a brand new person that you're calling off a website or a Zillow lead, but you have to have a way to prospect the lead correctly. And that's a skill set that has to be developed and eventually mastered. You guys have heard this before, but there's a good, better, and best. And anytime I take on new agents and I start the training, they're usually in between the good and better. And maybe sometimes they're awful. I started off awful, so I can say some of our agents are pretty awful at it. But there's always little things that we can do to make prospecting the best. And if you end up prospecting the best, just like when George was making for sale by owner calls, it seemed so easy for him to set appointments. I sat there and like, how is he leading them where they're saying, stop calling me, and all of a sudden at the end they're like, yeah, I guess I could be at 2 o'clock. Like, what is going on? And there was best ways. The problem with good and better is when you are good and better, you can get lost in the idea that you're doing something that sometimes works. And you get a little bit lost in sometimes it works. But where mastery, and I would say where you see top producers, is they become masters and excellent, and they become the best at prospecting. The little things, instead of closing a 2 or 3% of leads where you're closing 5 or 6% of your leads, is because they're the best. There's every single little thing that they're supposed to be doing on that call is the best. And when you end up hearing them prospect, like I did with George when he was prospecting, you hear there's something different. And for me, hearing someone do that was like, oh, if I could speak the way he's speaking, I would get so much more business. So I want to talk about things that happen when you start prospecting leads, especially when they're new. There's an initial thing that happens with every buyer that's looking to buy something. When you first contact them, and if you're a salesperson, there's a thing that I call a wall that happens. Now, I use this, my team will roll their eyes because I use this example quite a bit, but I use an RC Willey as an example. Who's been into RC Willey walking through? Has anyone bought something? Raise your hand if you've ever bought something from RC Willey. So almost everyone in this room. Now, when you walk through that, in the salespeople come up to you and they say, welcome to RC Willey, can I help you? What's the first thing that you say almost every single time? Just look. Do you say that almost every time? Okay, now you all raised your hand that you bought some, so you're all full of what? Crap. Or the S word or whatever. If it wasn't being recorded, I'd say it in front of everyone. But you're full of it. So you weren't just looking, you actually bought something. So you just need to understand that buyers will say that, and it's the wall. I'm just looking. We just started. We're not that interested. Or I'm looking. You caught me at a bad time. Who's ever caught someone that's in the hospital? Like, I'm at the doctor's office. Like, you're not the doctor. You're not picking up the phone in the doctor. That's what they say because it works. When you're in RC Willey and they're just looking, it's very easy to say, oh, I'm just looking right now. Or we're just browsing. We just started the process. Now, what I've realized in prospecting buyers is the easiest way to get past that is just repeat, affirm, and ask an additional question. So anytime that someone says, oh, we're just browsing right now, all I do is just repeat it. Oh, it sounds like you're just browsing. I affirm it. Great. Wonderful, that's awesome. And then I ask an additional question. Hey, let me ask you, when you get a little bit more serious, what specific things will you be looking for? I've realized doing that when the wall happens in sales, I'm getting 85% past the wall. So every time you guys, and I know you guys are all getting calls from random people that are prospecting you for whatever program or whatever thing, and you are hanging up on 99%, it's because they don't know how to get through the wall. I'm getting through this wall 85% by just repeating, affirming, and asking additional questions. So just, it's something that you could practice. You know, I'll have Austin as an example. Austin, I'll ring you, you ring me and get through the wall real quick. Hello?
Hey, is this Dave?
Hey, this is Dave.
Hey, Dave, this is Austin with Century 21. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great, thanks. Hey, I saw you on my website looking at some homes for sale. We've actually got a lot of new inventory coming up in South Jordan where you're looking. What are you looking for specifically?
Oh, you know, we actually just started the process. I'm not even sure if we're going to buy. We're just looking right now at this point.
Oh, okay, great. So it sounds like you guys are kind of just getting started then. Is that right?
Yeah.
Great. Well, hey, when you do get a little more serious, I noticed you're looking in South Jordan. Are you also looking in West Jordan, or is South Jordan kind of where you want to be?
Additional question. I don't even care what the question is. The fact that he repeated it, affirmed it, and asked a different question. Now, the reason why is that's masterful. I mean, good job. Let's give him a little. Very masterful. Austin is probably one of the best person making those calls that I've ever heard. I mean, very, very, very good at what he does. And so now, you guys have all had the opposite of that. You know, I had a guy yesterday call me, and I think it was from Homes.com. He literally, hey, is this Dave? I'm like, guys, I don't mind the calls because I love to hear how they're approaching their business. Yeah, this is Dave. You know, and I know who they are. I know it's a number. Immediately, when it doesn't pick up right away, where it's a dialer, we all know that. Most of you guys just hang up. You're rude. I love it. Like, this is like a welcome thing. So I enjoy that. So I'm like, yeah, hey, this is Dave. Oh, this is the Homes.com, and he just starts reading a script. And we have 42% in our agents do that. And it's just, Bill. And he's like, what? I'm like, Bill, that's awful, dude. And I'm like, that was awful. You gotta be better than that, man. It's like, dude, you didn't ask about my business, you didn't ask my situation, but it's because they don't know what they're doing. They're not doing that. We gotta be better than that. Repeat, affirm, and ask an additional question. That's getting through the wall. Once in a while, when you're doing that, that 15% or 20% still not going to open up. You're going to have to give what's called a sound bite or some kind of value statement. Now, a sound bite or value statement, Austin did that in his thing. He said, "Oh, I noticed you're looking in South Jordan. You know, if you're in RC Willey and you're looking at RC Willey, and you're looking at a brown couch, it'd be very easy to say, hey, I noticed you're looking at brown couches." And I could give a value statement or a soundbite that may get them to start speaking a little bit of their needs and wants. And how I would do that if I worked at RC Willey, where it's like, hey, I noticed you're looking at brown couches. I got a discount section in the back that we have a lot of those brown couches that we're trying to get rid of. What are you looking for specifically? Let me see if I have something that might work for you. Now, if I did that, there would be a high probability that I get that last 15 to 20% that shut me down to finally say, like, maybe I'll give you a little bit more. But when you guys are prospecting buyers, what's a soundbite? What's a soundbite or a value statement that you could give that maybe gets them to open up a little bit more about their situation? I got 4 guys. I'm very disappointed with 5 guys.
Giving everyone else a chance. We know the answers to these.
Okay. Yes.
I don't know if you're looking for a great deal. We just help some first-time buyers lock in with a real nice payment on a home when they thought all they could afford was a condo.
Love it. You know, gave an example. I just helped a first-time home buyer. We're able to get him a really good payment on a first-time home. It's great instead of a condo. Awesome. You know, what are buyers looking for right now?
Good deal.
A good deal. What do they connect a good deal? What's some things in this market that they connect a good deal be? Foreclosure, a short sale, a HUD home, a divorce situation, listings that are motivated sellers. There's a lot of different things that are those triggered. In RC Willey, maybe hey, my discount section in the back that you don't have access to, but I got my little card that lets me back. Let me go check my inventory. What are you looking for specifically? let me see if I have something that might fit your needs. So we gotta use a soundbite, we gotta use a value statement. I love John's, first time home buyer program. It could be the rates, we're able to get, I ended up just closing a buyer that we got them $20,000 from the sellers. We were able to buy down their interest rate. It was awesome. Right now it's a great time to buy for that. But we were able to find something that was off market, that never even you saw on any website, that was a lot less price. But that's a value statement or a soundbite. Gets them, I'm like, oh, maybe I should open up to this little guy, to this guy right now. So you have to have some things in your arsenal. The thing you shouldn't do is not have anything. You have to have your go-to. I mean, it could be as simple as I work at Century 21. We sell more real estate in our brokers than any other brokerage in the state. And I'm not trying to brag, but I'm just trying to let you know we have so much properties that come through our office that a lot of times I'm getting access to things that are about to get listed. I'd love to reach out to you first. What are you looking for specifically? I'd love to understand your situation a little bit more. Oh my goodness, you're working in South Jordan. I'm the South Jordan agent. Weird. So I'm so excited to talk to you today. That's all I do is I'm the South Jordan guy. What are you looking for? I want to make sure, any of my South Jordan people, that I can reach out to you first. It doesn't matter. You have to have some go-tos when you're getting there. That gets you past the next percentage. Okay, rapport. The purpose of prospecting, and it doesn't matter if it's an SOI referral, it's a web lead, door knocking, is you have to connect to them. You have to you have to build on common interest, you have to build on common beliefs, and you have to build rapport with them. Now, we use an acronym when we build a rapport. And for me, I needed that early in my career, and we use it, it's called FORD. And there's 4 things with FORD. Family, the F, occupation with the O, recreation with the R, and dreams with the D, so 4. So anytime I'm starting to talk to someone, I get a little lost, I don't know what to ask anymore. I think, could I talk about family? Could I talk about occupation? Could I talk about recreation? Hey, where are you going? You do anything fun this summer? You traveling? I talk about their dreams. What would you like to see this happen? What's most important about this transaction for you guys? Those are things that connect me and build a rapport. When you're prospecting, a lot of times I'm seeing agents that are making calls. A lot of times they are not capturing on things that come up organically in the call. They'll say like, well, tell me what you're looking for. What about a backyard? Oh yeah, we need a big backyard. I got a dog. And then they're like, okay, so we need a backyard. And what about a garage? What did I miss right in that moment that I should have done? Guys, I've gone deep on dog situations. Oh my gosh, a poodle! I love poodle. Guys, connect with them. I mean, there was a lady that I had an agent that we were prospecting, and he was making some live calls for me, and he made a call, and it was like, this is my 3rd attempt. She is always really short with me, and basically almost hangs up, but not enough where he feels like he should call. This is not a good time. You need to call me a different time. And then they hangs up. And I said, I want you to do this. You're not building rapport. You're not connecting, and we can get through that. And so we set a task to call her back. And I said, I'm going to get through that wall, and I'm going to build a rapport. And she was tough. She was short with me. And when I called her a week later, I finally connected on women or her daughter's soccer. And we went 8 minutes on soccer. Anything that I possibly could remember in my life of 40 years, 45 now, but I was thinking soccer. I was like, my sister played comp soccer. I know there's some struggle on travel and the cost, but she loved it. It was what we connected on. It got me to a point where that wall went down, and I had connected to her to lead to the next thing, which was an appointment. So we got to be good. Family, occupation, recreation, and dream. Can we connect to them? Are we missing opportunities? Sometimes, guys, it doesn't land. Sometimes I'm thinking, occupation, where I'm like, oh, you're moving here because your husband, got a job transfer. What does he do? He's interim, but you could hear it, oh, she does not want to talk about her husband's job, and you can hit a wall really quickly. That's okay. It may be comp soccer. It may be a poodle. It may be whatever. But your job is, to be a master communicator is to figure out how we're building on common interests. I had an appointment last night that we got a listing, and the lady was just hard. We walked in as an expired listing. We walked in, the first thing, she I don't remember what the husband started talking about price, And we didn't even see the property. I'm like looking in, like, kind of what we thought on condition kind of thing. But like he started doing that, and the lady's like, yeah, we need at least this. And it was like, I'm like, well, you were under that when you were listed before. And I said, well, you were listed for $675. We were never listed at $675. I'm like, okay, if I'm missing something, but like I had to let's pull up the MLS and look at the history. 6 months at $675. She was just honored. By the end of the appointment, we connected on that everyone thinks that she looks younger than what she is. That was the thing. It was the weirdest thing. She's like, oh, like, how old do you think I am? And I'm like, oh, I think that's what she's wanting. So I'm like, I don't know, like mid 40s. She's like 57. I'm like, oh my gosh. We talked for minutes about that. And I'm like, I bet you when you were 21. She's like, yeah. And she told me the story when they carded her ID and thought she was 15, and she loved that. But that was the thing that we built on. That was the wall that came down, allowed us to have open dialogue and conversations to lead to the next thing, which is the appointment. And that one was to actually setting the listing, or the listing agreement. So understand that rapport is most important. When I was brand new, I thought listing, presentation, I gotta have my packet and have all the pictures, and I gotta be perfect, and the way my card looked and all that kind of. Guys, I don't bring any of that crap anymore. I realize that the way people feel is how they make decisions. And if I am likable in their mind and I'm connecting to them, they're going to make decisions. Very rarely, maybe the most analytical person will care about the packet, but most people, it's the way they feel. And if I can make them feel a certain way by connecting and building on common interests and beliefs, they'll usually end up signing with me. And so that's my focus. How do I connect to them? Okay, rapport. Any questions so far on that? Any thoughts? The goal is rapport. The goal is rapport. The first step is the wall. The second one is using sound bites and value statements. The third is trying to connect to them and build rapport. And then we eventually end up, leading into an appointment. Awesome.
First rule of sales used to be, they'd say, oh, you gotta be likable, you gotta be likable. And I think there's a part of that, but a lot of the things they've said, it's if they feel liked by you.
Love it.
And there's a story that I share a lot. It's about Winston Churchill's mom. It's a true story. She was always hosting people. She had 2 people come to the home. First guy came and she said, when he left, I thought he was the most interesting person in the world. And when the second person left, she said, I felt like I was the most interesting person in the world.
That is great.
And I use that example all the time because who do you think she would want to spend her time with? The person that she felt interesting with. There are people that I see that I don't think are very likable, but they do a lot of business. I've got a couple in my head I can think of. I won't share names.
Like looking right at me. What do you say?
But when people are around them, they are interested in them. They're like, oh, I like how I feel when I'm around this person. That's what you're hoping to connect on.
Love it. It's great. Most important thing is they have to feel that way. They have to feel that from you. So, and frankly, they have to feel that you want to work with them. Guys, I have said this on prospecting. I always do it, try to razz my agents and get a little thing out when we make calls together. But I will tell them, we're going to become best friends. I've said that to a prospect that I've talked for 4 minutes. You're going to love me, we're going to become best friends. And they're like, weirdo a little bit, but I love to that. Because I want them to know that I want your business. I want to work with you. I called a lady in yesterday in a call training. I said, you are a well. And that's weird to call a woman a well. But I'm like, you are a well in my eyes. You have 3 different properties. I am going to figure out how to sneak in and be your real estate agent. And she laughed, she giggled or whatever, but people want to feel like you want to work with them. They want to make sure that you like them. So those are important things. That's great. Thanks, Austin. Okay, appointments. Where are we trying? What kind of appointments are we trying to go for? I mean, it depends, right? It depends on how the call goes. Now, if I was prospecting someone and I started talking to them about their qualifications, and I said, hey, just curious, have you had a chance to talk to a lender? Do you know what you qualify for? And they said, I'm not sure, I'm still working on some credit. What kind of appointment should I be setting? Yeah, a lender appointment. That should be a very easy trigger for me to say, oh, yeah, no worries at all. I work with a great lender. Let me have him give you a call. You can do a pre-qualification right over the phone. Then we'll know exactly what your purchasing power is, okay? So I'll say it in a way where I close, where I'm kind of demanding an okay back. Now, if I had talked to someone, they said, well, this is my 3rd home. We just sold that. We've been living with my family to save up the 20%. And I asked about their qualification, but we're really wanting to be in the Bountiful area. We like this Sunset or the Eaglewood area, what kind of appointment should I be setting?
Whether in office or in a showing.
Yeah, maybe set up a time to go show homes. You know, maybe say, well, let's do this. You know, I'll pick 5 or 6 in that area. Let's go out there and just go see what's available. Let's get your feet wet. I think so many times as real estate professionals, we forget what we're selling. You know, I say this to my agents all the time, is don't forget what we're selling. And everyone's like, oh, but we're selling homes, Dave. But we're not selling homes. I cannot tell you how many times I have looked at a client and said, this is everything they've told me they want. And then they end up buying this. And I'm like, what is going on? We are selling a process. And part of the process is them purchasing the home. But you got to make sure that you understand that you are selling your process. They are going to decide what they want to buy. They're going to decide, you know, that's them. But our process and working with them gets us paid. You know, I'm going to expose them to the market. They're going to look at benefits and features. They're going to look at the list of items, the needs and wants they want, and they're going to settle on things that they decide they want to settle on. That's a lot out of my control. And so we're selling the process. Do you guys care if they buy A or B home? No, right? You don't. The only thing you care is what? They buy with you. That's the most important. So if you get caught up in the idea that, oh, I'm only selling a specific home, that's the only way it's going to do, you're going to have a hard time. So if I'm setting an appointment to go see homes, and the attitude is, well, show me the home first, and then I'll start working with you, then there's a mistake. I may need to end up prospect different where I'm saying something like, hey, like, that's not part of the process. My process is that we look at a bunch of homes, we go back to the drawing board, you tell me what you like and don't like, and then we figure out how to find you the right house. But my goal is to try to get in front of them as soon as possible. Try to get an agency agreement. Try to control the process. You know, the thing I don't want to do, and I love the change with the buyer broker thing. We had been getting buyer brokers for 20 years. So when all of a sudden that changed, like, we have to get a buyer broker, and how will they sign that? It's like, I'm laughing, because like we've done this from day one. It's all we've done. I love controlling the process. I love when I'm in a movie and I see a call from one of my clients that I'm not stressed that I better run out because if I don't get this call right now, they're going to call someone else. Buyer brokers are awesome. I'm not saying I get bad service, but I don't want to live my life where I'm having to walk out of a movie because I'm worried about buyers screwing me. So getting a buyer broker is awesome. The sooner you guys can get that in the process, the sooner that you're controlling the process. Okay. So,
Hey, Dave, can I,
Yeah.
sorry, I've been listening the whole time.
I doubt it.
I'm impressed that you
Is
said
it
5
5
minutes about me. I have a question for you, like, what, I didn't hear you, but when you're, can you just demonstrate when you're at the house, how you get that buyer broker signed?
Yes, I will.
Because it is
Yep.
fantastic.
I will. That's one of the sections on here that I'll talk
Okay.
about buyer broker. Okay, so 3 areas, just real quickly. Area that I said is specific homes in an area. I'm not saying specific home, specific homes in an area. So when I'm prospecting and I'm wanting to set an appointment, I'll say, hey, let's do this. I'm going to be up in the Bountiful area on Thursday and Friday. I'm going to pick 5 or 6 homes that best fit your criteria. Let's go see some homes. Let's get, it's afternoons, evening, what works best for you. I'm setting an appointment in a specific area. I'm not giving them a property to look at, and I'm setting an appointment. If they're a little lost in their situation, like, well, we want to be in Bountiful, but we're also thinking Provo, I don't really want to go to Bountiful and Provo. I may want to set an appointment in the office and try to get a buyer broker there. So I'll say, hey, let's do this. I have an office right in the middle, right in Cottonwood Heights. Let's have you come in, spend 15, 20 minutes, I'll go through the buying process with you, and then you're the most informed buyer in the market. And I set an appointment here. And the purpose of that is to get a buyer broker agreement. The third is the lender. I have 0% down. I don't care how good they sound. If they have 0% down, they need to talk to a lender. They need to go through the pre-qualification. It's not, when Jeremy and I first started doing this, guys, I cannot tell you how many times where someone was excited to meet with us, and it was like 4th appointment where they're like, yeah, so we just did a bankruptcy, and I'm like, what am I doing? Kind of thing. We had a guy that just got out of jail, and I'm like, he doesn't have a job, and I'm like, walking up the stairs, and he finally mentions, like, yeah, I just got out of jail. I'm like, what am I in this house for right now? and you would think that people are smart enough to be like, like, oh, I shouldn't buy a house. They're not. Like, you deal with this all day long. They're like you have no business calling. Like, I got to get off this phone call. People know. So you got to be better at asking good questions to get the data.
Is that your hierarchy of how you set an appointment? Is meet at the house? If we can't do that, we're going to come to the office and then the lender, or would you rather have them come to the office?
So it just depends. So this is it's a really, really great question. Guys, if I work with someone that has bought multiple homes and is saving up a certain down because they want a conventional versus an FHA because they don't want mortgage insurance, and I say, well, let's do this. Let me have you talk to my lender. Guys, there's a high probability that they're getting ghosted from that lender. And it's not because they're not a great lead, it's because they are very confident that when they find the house, they're gonna be able to buy a house. Can you imagine, put yourself, if you qualify, that you know you could buy a car. You can buy a very, very expensive car, you can buy whatever car you want. Can you imagine if you go in the dealership and you get forced like, well, before we go too much further, I need to have you talk with my guy about your finances. I'm like, shit, what your guy thinks. I'll pay cash if I want for your car. We turn someone off. So sometimes not talking to the lender, they may be more qualified to buy a house, but you have to ask good questions. So if you're unsure, talk about down payment. Talk about more, an easy way for me to discover if they know what they're doing is I would say, depending on their price point, I would figure out kind of what they think their payment's gonna be. What payment are you comfortable with? If their payment matches roughly to the price point that they're looking and they're putting a down payment, I'm gonna take a risk. I'm gonna go out in an appointment or two, and then I'm gonna push very hard to get them finalized on the pre-approval, to get the buyer broker agreement. So I guess to go to your answer, it depends. It's gonna be one of the threes. As an agent, your job is during that prospecting period is to figure out which of the three that you're leading to. That's your job. And you can make a mistake by thinking like, well, I'm gonna force this lender and now you're getting ghosted and the lender's getting ghosted, when really you needed to get out there and look at houses and get them excited and build a stronger connection to sit in the house and say, Bill, I know that you're qualified. I know you can get a loan. But dude, I'm telling you, when you find that house and we're in that house and they say, oh, and we're writing up an offer and we're having a hard time getting that pre-qualification because you just didn't want to do it until you found the right house, and we lose the house, you're gonna look at me and you're gonna scream at me that I didn't push you to do this. So instead of me pushing you to do it, let's just get it done. Let's get it done. Let's make sure that we have it. I can tell them that your credit's already been pulled, the income documents are already been submitted. You're going to be so much more competitive as a buyer when we finally find a house than us trying to scramble to do it at the last minute. And I can do that when I have rapport, when I build them. So it just depends. Is it worthy of my time to go invest in this situation or not? And that depends on how the call goes. 0%, no money down, never bought a house before. Those are enough things like, yeah, just not gonna go show you a bunch of homes until I know that you're qualified. Make sense? Okay. Okay, last thing, a couple more things. Buyer broker agreement. Do you have a script? Do you know how to, you should have a script at this point. The law is, you can get fined if you don't have a buyer broker and you're showing homes. I mean, at this point, you should have a script on knowing how to get buyer broker agreements. I'll tell you mine. Guys, I love the way that we do our buyer brokers. It's mine. Like, it doesn't need to be yours. You can figure out how you do it. But you have to have something that you go to every time that you feel very comfortable doing. How I do it is when I'm prospecting someone on the phone and I have an appointment set with a specific time and a location, that's when I'll bring up the buyer broker agreement. Now, there's a reason for that. If I bring it up prematurely, early in the conversation, let's say I start prospecting and we're 8 minutes in the call and we're talking about needs and wants, and they mention something, or I bring up, like, well, are you working with someone? They're like, oh yeah, I got a friend that, that we're planning on using. Do we even know if that's their agent or not? No, that may be who they're planning on. Well, my aunt is, a real estate agent. That's who we're planning on going with. Well, now you're scrambling, like, well, I'm in this weird ethics line, like, well, I can't go too much further if they have an agent. Have you signed with her? And then they're like, it ends up turning into a weird conversation way too early. So I avoid any of that until I'm ready to put some time into the situation.
Dave, especially at the beginning of the phone call, they're in that like, now, who are you? Why are you? I got somebody. It's the same as we're not serious. They're wanting to get off the phone. Oh, we got somebody.
Yes.
Oh, have you signed something?
Yeah.
Yeah, we signed something because I think that's going to get you off the phone.
Yeah. Oh, or not yet, but we're pretty committed to, guys, like, you don't have any rapport. You don't need no needs and wants. You don't have the home that they're excited to go see today, or even seeing homes in general. I mean, sometimes it's the idea of like, I'm excited to see 5 homes today. We see homes all the time. There's nothing, guys, the parade of homes, like, put a gun to my head. Like, you will never see me at a parade of homes. Why on earth would I not getting paid to go and look at a bunch of dumb homes? Like, I don't give 2 shits about homes. like, Guess what the public does? They love seeing homes. They are excited to go through a bunch of homes. So when you have 5 homes that you're gonna show them, they're excited. That's the time to bring up the buyer broker. They may have got a babysitter. They may have got work off. They told their boss, oh, you're gonna look at, oh, that's so exciting for you guys today. Good luck, hope you guys find something. Well, then all of a sudden you're dropping the buyer broker on mom. It's a lot easier for them to say yes and not say no because they're excited. So wait until the right moment. I wait until I have an appointment set with specific time and location, and I do it as an afterthought. So when I'm prospecting, I'll give you I'll just say my script, and you can watch the video later if you write it up and copy it, or I don't care. But right when let's say I'm going to go show a home on Johnson Avenue, and we're going to see 5 homes. I'll say, well, at the very end before I'll call them, and I always will be a call. It won't be a text message. I cannot hear tonality and different things through a text message. But when I'm prospecting them at the very end, I'll say, okay, that's awesome. We'll plan on meeting at Johnson Avenue at 3. It takes about 20, 30 minutes to go through each house, so I'll just have you guys follow me house to house until we get through all 5. Well, I'm really excited to meet with you guys. So let's plan on that, okay? So, and it's always an afterthought. Oh, Susan, I forgot to ask you, you're not working with another agent. I hate to step on their toes. I say it just like that. And most of the time at that point, they're the most excited. They're like, you're not hurting anyone. Like, I'm excited to meet with you today. They're already committed on seeing homes. And then I drop the bomb on them. I call them the buyer broker bomb. Oh, when they say, no, you're good. I'll say, oh, perfect. Now, when we meet today, I'm going to have you sign what's called a buyer agency agreement. Now, what that does, it allows me to spend my time and energy working with you guys, knowing that when we do find the right house, you're going to use me to write the offer, okay? I say just like that. And I would say, 80% they say yes, okay? And the 20% that don't say okay, guess what they say? Now, what is that again? And all I do is I say the same thing exactly the same way. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't explain that. What it is, it's a buyer agency agreement. What it does, it allows me to spend my time and energy working with you, knowing that you find the right house, you're going to use me to write the offer, okay? And about that goes from an 80% yes to almost like a 95%. And then once in a while, I'll have to add a little bit in there. But because I have it memorized verbatim, I can just add a very smooth thing. What allows me to spend my time and energy working with you, and when we find the right house, I'm going to have the sellers pay the commission. I'll put that in the agreement. But just this lets me spend my time and energy working with you, knowing that we do find that right house, you're going to use me to write the offer, okay? So I just have a script. I've got buyer brokers, a very, very high, probably in the 95 to 100% rate. I mean, very rarely am I not getting it. The only time I am getting it is when they really are going to screw me. It's like, oh, well, my mom is our agent and she was out of town and I was hoping you'd show me homes today. Those are times where like, oh, great, this is a great time that I've discovered this, and I'm not wasting time. So having a buyer broker script is crucial. Having it where it's very comfortable. We were listening to an agent that was trying to prepare them for the buyer broker agreement, guys, and it was crazy. Like they were all over the place on how they were trying to lead them down to get a buyer broker, talking about the NAR. Well, there's new rules on there, and it was like, I'm scared. Like, you're scaring me right now to sign up. It's and guess what? Going back to my good, better, best, that agent had 3 or 4 under contract. So it wasn't like he wasn't having success, but there's a better way of doing it. How many deals has he lost because he's doing it a good way, not the best way? So understand, having a very specific way will make the difference of a lot of transactions because it's there. I have a recorded call of a lady where I've done a buyer broker script, and literally she was like, her brain was like talking out loud. Like, she's like, well, I have a couple friends that are real estate agents, but I guess I can use whoever I want. Oh, okay. So, literally, she was just, yes, you can use whoever you want. I'll plan on seeing you there at 3 o'clock. And I picked her up, and probably her 2 best friends were like, what the fudge? And how many we had that? We're like, my cousin, or whatever. Why are they using someone else? Someone probably gave a good buyer broker script. Got it. So, okay. Questions on any of that? Any thoughts, feelings? I got about 2 more minutes and I'll be done. Okay, I have a lot more, but I'll end with a couple things. Just a couple thoughts. When you're working with a buyer, understand the buyer settle. Is what they told you originally doesn't always match what they end up doing. And I think it's very important to understand that is again, we all agreed that I don't really care if they buy option A or B, I just want, when they do pick an option A or B, I just want them to use me through the process, that's what gets us paid. So just understand that, you know, setting up a hot sheet, have some, you know, some parameters that are a little outside of what they told you. If they say, oh, we don't wanna spend anything over $500,000, I hope that you're not putting in $500,000. I hope that you're putting it up maybe another $50,000. You know, if they're saying, oh, we need at least 4 bedrooms, I hope that you're not missing out on the 3 bedrooms with a lot that they could use. That technical agent that's following the rules exactly, that didn't have a closet, marked it as an office. Or guys, I'll mark it all day long. Earmuffs on that. All day long as I had a house that didn't have a 3rd car garage. They used it as like a gym, but I marked it as a 3rd car garage, and I had like 2 complaints and paid the fines. Oh, it's not being recorded, but like guys, because guess what? The buyers needed to know this was a house that had a 3rd car garage that could be converted, but technically didn't have a garage door or whatever. So like, I'm just saying, like, make sure your parameters are wide enough that you're capturing all these things. Buyers will settle. They all settle. The buyers that don't settle, what do they settle on? The buyers that don't settle, what do they settle on? They still settle on something. They end up doing what?
Usually location.
Maybe location, that's still settling? Price. They settle on price. They end up paying way more than they thought to get all the things that they want, but they all settle. So it's either gonna be price, or it's gonna be benefits and features of the house, but they all settle. You will never know. I've had people that say that the reason they're moving is because they need a 3rd car garage and they end up buying a 2-car garage. And you're just like, we talked about your cars and you're doing all these extra things, and they're excited about this new construction 2-car garage. So just understand that you don't know where that's gonna be. And you can't sometimes pinpoint. People that absolutely need single family homes, they end up buying a condo. And I was like, what are we doing? You know, but we want them to sell with us. So just make sure your parameters are big enough that you're capturing those.
One of the coolest examples I've heard of this, I'm trying to see who's in the room, but is Brian Noel, when he sold the $17 million home, the buyer started looking at $5 million homes originally. And by the time it was said and done, it was $17 million in promontory.
Love it.
And that is the ultimate sell.
Yeah. Settle on price. Got everything they wanted, it's at $2 million. So, the other thing is if you're not having a system, if you're not working a website that has a built-in CRM system, you have to have a CRM system. You have to have something that when you have a neighbor that's saying, hey, you should work with my sister, and you call the sister and you realize the sister's 6 months out, you have to have a place that you're following a system, a CRM system that will remind you to follow up with that person. I don't think there's anything that we do in real estate that where more money is lost than bad follow-up. That is, you know, we have these great conversations, we have these action items put in place, and we forget to follow up with them. Who's had that call where you were a week or 2 late, where they're like, oh my gosh, thanks for calling, but we just went under contract, and you're just like, kill me now, kind of thing. And it's just usually bad follow-up. Rule of thumb, I cut my follow-up in half. They say call me in 3 months, I call them in 6 weeks. They call me in 2 weeks, I call them in a week. You know, the only time I don't really cut it in half is they call me tomorrow and I call them later that night. I don't usually do that, but usually I cut it in half. I want to get a little bit ahead of where they're at. So, but you have to have a system. So just think in your mind, do I have a system that if I get a lead, let's say you're working for sell by owners, you know, and you have a system that's set up for sell by owners. Do you have a way that if someone says, you know, oh, you know, I'm not looking to sell anymore, but can you help my sister buy something? Do you have a way to put it in a system that doesn't allow you and forces you to follow up with them correctly? If you don't, then you need to figure it out. Century 21, I think it's Moxie, is that what it's a free thing that's part of Century 21. Well, free and 6%, but it's a free thing that we do. Included. So guys, use the systems that are there, but have a way. When I first started, I didn't have one. It was like I had notepads, little cards, you know, phone reminders or whatever, and I would lose people. I'd have that constantly because again, you cannot control when someone's going to buy. You know, they go hot and cold. Who's had that where they went cold and like, we're not going to buy anymore. We're going to pay off our credit card, and then 6 weeks later they're buying again. You're like, you know, they pretend like you're like Men in Black. Like I wish, you know, it's easier for us to forget that happened because it feels very awkward. You know, I've had people try to get out buyer broker agreements, and then the next week when they realize they can't, Russ talking to them, and we're out there again, and I'm pretending like, oh, you didn't just try to screw me, kind of thing. It's like, you know, buyers you cannot control the process of when buyers are going to buy and sell. What you can do is when they buy, they're buying in with you and giving them awesome customer services through the process. So, I have a lot more, but we're out of time. Any last questions, thoughts? Yes?
So I'm just curious, how do you have that conversation when a buyer says to you, well, what happens if the seller is not going to pay your commission?
I very rarely it has ever happened. At that point, yeah, if we ask the sellers, then we can talk about that and make sure it's the right house for you guys. You know?
Kind of, but I would just
Yeah.
say that I agree with him 100%. You've rarely seen it, and that's because, just as a general rule, you know that if there's over 3 months supply of homes in the marketplace, you're in a buyer's market.
Right.
We have yet to see a seller's market since the changes. There has not been a seller's market, hasn't existed. Do I believe you still will be able to get it? Yes, but when there's 25 offers on a home, that'll be a question to be had.
Yeah.
Right, we have not seen that since
Yeah.
the changes.
Yeah.
So just to add to that, our average commission is up after
Yeah.
all of these changes.
I've noticed that too,
happened.
since the
As a
changes,
company.
my commission's a lot.
Like Dave said, your team's making more money, it's
Yeah.
just.
Way higher. And lots, and if, sometimes if they negotiate that a little bit down, before we actually accept something, we'll talk about the difference and how to make it up.
Real quick on that too, I can't tell you how many times I've written the offer at 3%, they counter me at 2 or 2.5. It's a simple phone call to call them back and say, I'm so sorry, we're not gonna do that, it has to be 3%. And guess what, every time they roll it, it's always 3%. I don't think I've taken more than one discount on a buyer
Since the change.
Well, and that's because agents are so weak that they're so
Yeah.
desperate for a deal, they actually don't stand up for it.
Yes, so it's easy.
I've even had buyers tell me, well, I can't believe they're not gonna give you 3%, I'll throw in
Yeah, and they'll do it.
another 0.5%.
Yeah, you know, $1,500 or $2,000 more to make it work. Guys, it's worth it. $2,000 more. Put a little bit less on your down payment, let's get this house. Little nudge at the very end. Last thing, guys, make some adjustments, make some changes. It's worth it. This business is absolutely amazing. Sometimes I have to sit back and really look at the gratitudes of what it's done and remind myself of like, it's the same thing I've done for 20 years. And it's this, you know, after a while, you just kind of know what to do in this business. But man, this vehicle of real estate, the connection that we've had, it's absolutely amazing what it can do. I mean, these commissions that we're getting are massive, you know, and just getting a little bit better, making a little bit of adjustments in your skill set where you're also closing more transactions. I mean, you have 5 or 6 more transactions, you're making another $50,000, $100,000. I mean, it's unbelievable what it is just doing a little bit more. So, you know, analyze, make sure that you're taking some time and really going through your inventory and say, hey, where am I strong, where am I weak? Some of the things that I'm weak, what can I do to do different? Who is someone that maybe can help me through that process? We got amazing brokers at this company that really know how to do real estate. Make sure that you're reaching out and getting help. You know, there's no reason, I've said this to my team constantly, guys, this business is difficult, very difficult. The only way it makes sense in my mind is you have to get wealthy doing it. There's no middle ground. The reason why we named the team the elite team is I only wanted to surround myself with people that wanted to do real estate at a very, very high level. You know, I had no interest with part-time people that you know, and I don't mind if someone's part-time that wants to get there, but I just didn't want to do that. I don't want to surround myself with people that don't want to get wealthy through real estate and make this where you're absolutely crushing and change your life. It's there. It's there in this market. I know it's a difficult market right now. I know it's a little bit more challenging, but just working a little bit different, working a little bit harder, guys, you can still make a crap load of money even in this market. So, you know, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.